Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of this channel. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Stefan and today we are going to discuss about a rather controversial topic, I would say. As you know, the FIFA World Cup 2022 has just started and runs until Sunday, December 18th. This is actually the first FIFA World Cup not taking place in the Northern Hemisphere summer and is actually being held at the end of autumn and the start of winter in the Persian Gulf region. Although I'm not a big football fan myself, I believe this sport is meant to bring people together from all walks of life. However, that's not really the case, I would say, as Qatar appears to be a rather controversial host. So let's put aside the fact that there is a big corruption scandal and there are a lot of allegations brought by the United States that Qatar basically bought the World Cup. So I'm just going to read now an article from New York Times, which is saying that Qatar, a tiny desert state that has spent billions of dollars to prepare for the 2022 World Cup, defeated the United States in a runoff by a group of voters that had already been trimmed because two members had been secretly filmed agreeing to sell their votes. Wow, I mean, that's just insane. But anyways, I don't want to go too much into detail about this, but what I will do is I'll leave a few links in the description for you to have a read and look more into this so-called corruption scandal. But what I really want to emphasize was actually the point which says that Qatar spent billions of dollars. So according to The Sun, other countries such as Brazil have spent in the past $15 billion pounds in order to host the cup, while Russia has spent around 11.5 billion in the most recent World Cup. You'd think that's a lot of money spent on the World Cup, right? Well, hold on. It seems that Qatar has actually spent around 200 billion pounds in order to host the FIFA World Cup. I mean, can you imagine that? This is the most expensive FIFA World Cup ever, and you might be wondering, where did all that money go? Well, looking at an article published by Forbes, it seems that, quoting, Qatar's Minister of Finance said that in 2017, the country was spending 500 million per week on infrastructure projects, including roads, hotels, stadium, and airport upgrades to prepare the small Middle Eastern nation to host the world's largest sporting event. And as I said, it is by far the most expensive tournament, and this is like 15 times more than what Russia spent in the 2018 event. I mean, if you look at these numbers, for me, it's just insane, you know? So according to Investment Monitor, Qatar has actually built 7 of the 8 World Cup venues from scratch. So of course they had to outsource a lot of labor because being such a small country with a population over 2 million, I mean, it's just impossible. So that's something that we will discuss later. But yeah, I mean, look, they've spent so much money and they are expecting 1.3 million visitors. Realistically, their investment is unlikely to pay off now. It's also said that 80% of the hotel rooms were actually reserved for FIFA officials. But what does Qatar actually want to achieve with this? How will they benefit? Well, as you might imagine, they are just playing the long-term game here, you know? And this is such a smart PR move, by the way, because what they are doing is they are building a massive brand image for them, which they can use to attract foreign investment, they can use to attract tourists. I mean, you can even compare this with the launch of the television news Al Jazeera. I mean, just think about this. When Al Jazeera appeared, that really put Qatar on the media landscape in the Arab world, and now they are trying to attract tourists, possible foreign investments. And just think about it. I mean, oil and gas are literally the backbone of Qatar industry, and I believe more than 70% of the government revenue comes from natural oil reserves. So I believe they're actually trying to diversify their economy with this. I mean, they are well aware that the world is heading towards sustainable energy, but I believe it will likely take at least 30 years from now. So Qatar is already looking at alternative ways of generating revenue, and tourism is one of them. So that's how they're playing the game. But in all of this, what is the actual cost? Well, that's exactly where I wanted to get. Of course, in order to put together such a big project, Qatar had to outsource their workforce. Now, there have been a lot of allegations that the working conditions were very rough and the workers were being exploited. So according to Human Rights Watch organizations, the migrant workers traveling to Qatar and also other countries in the Gulf region, they face so many abuses throughout their migration circle. It even starts from their home countries, where they have to pay these exorbitant fees just in order to secure the jobs, and often they actually have to get in debt just to process these contracts. I mean, that's crazy. I've watched out some reports from these countries, and their families were confirming that they had to actually borrow money in order to secure these jobs. And then when they arrive in Qatar, they are sometimes presented with contracts that pay less than they were promised. Again, the Human Rights Watch research has also shown that there are so many abuses of migrant worker rights in Qatar, and these are serious violations of the human rights. So Qatar has in place a sponsorship system named kafala, excuse me for that, which basically ties the migrant worker to its employer. So they can't really leave without permission, so they can't actually exchange the jobs, and they are also unfortunately subject to routine confiscation of their passports by employers. As I said, they pay so many recruitment fees to secure these jobs, and that would actually, instead of helping them to make money, that just keeps them indebted. So yeah, I would say these are some big issues that we need to discuss, especially now when so many people are gathering there to watch the matches. I think it's so important to bear in mind how all these stadiums have been built. And as I said, this is of course a human rights issue. Now the question is, how did FIFA and the government of Qatar and also other organizations involved, how did they respond to these criticisms addressing the migrant workers? Well, looking again at another article from Human Rights Watch organization, it seems that the Qatari government have actually taken some action about this in 2017. So following years of pressure by human rights organizations, media outlets, and international trade, Qatar promised to dismantle this kafala system, which again gives employers so much power over their employees, and they've actually implemented some reforms in this sense. So since the Qatari government has made these reforms by allowing migrant workers to change their jobs, and have also lifted the abuse exit permit requirements, which prevented them from leaving the country without their employer's permission. They have also established a non-discriminatory basic minimum wage for all workers. So definitely the conditions have now improved. But again, if you look back at the stats from The Guardian, it says that more than 6,500 migrant workers from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have actually died in Qatar since they won the right to host the World Cup 10 years ago. I mean, these numbers are just massive, guys. And these findings have actually said that an average of 12 migrant workers from these 5 South Asian nations have died each week since the night of December 2010. Since the streets of Qatar have been filled with ecstatic crowds celebrating Qatar's victory, the migrant workers have been dying, and it's mainly due to the inhumane conditions. And also take into account that the number of deaths still does not include from a number of deaths from other migrants which have not been registered. And you have to think that behind these stats are numerous families devastated by what has happened to their loved ones. And as far as I'm aware, and from what I've read online, they are still waiting for answers from the government regarding what happened to their loved ones, and those families are still struggling to receive compensation even as of right now. So that is indeed a big issue, and it shouldn't be neglected. Now let's talk a bit also about the women's rights in Qatar. So there is also a big debate about women's rights and what women are allowed and not allowed in Qatar. I imagine that a lot of female football fans are actually traveling to Qatar for the World Cup, you know. However, it seems there are also a lot of rules in place, which some of them are expected to be there as a Muslim country, but that on the other side, I think some of them are very, very extreme. So it seems that the government has actually warned against intimacy in public, which again the government warns that it can lead to arrest. But then what about reports of sexual violence and harassment? Well, according to The Week, Qatar's strict laws can also lead to difficulties when reporting instances of sexual violence, with The Athletic reporting that several human rights groups have expressed concerns that female football fans could be prosecuted and subjected to harsh punishment if they report sexual assault while in the country. I mean, wow, that's a big statement. So how can you, as a female football fan, how would you go there knowing that, well, you are not really safe? I mean, the government keeps saying everyone is welcome and you should all be safe, but then there are so many statements out there saying that it's not really like that. So how is life actually for Qatari women? Because we've talked a lot about tourists and rules. Well, according to The Week, a Human Rights Watch report in 2021 found that women in Qatar are living under a system of deep discrimination through a system of government that means that women are often dependent on men for permission to marry, travel, pursue higher education, or make decisions about their own children. I mean, that's a lot. It seems that women are not really allowed to do anything, in my opinion. The Qatari government rejected the accounts in the report as inaccurate, saying that these do not truly represent the country's constitutions and laws, policies. Well, of course, the government rejected these claims. Now, I'm just asking you a question. As a female football fan, do you still feel motivated to travel to Qatar for the World Cup? Yeah, I'll be curious to see what your thoughts are, so please leave a comment if you'd like. So Qatar, of course, also bans same-sex marriage, and LGBT is another thing that I wanted to discuss. So the government official of Qatar said that, again, everyone is welcome to their country. However, according to Reuters, some hotels, they said they won't even accept same-sex couples despite FIFA promises, which is a bit paradoxical, isn't it? I mean, you're saying that everyone is welcome, but then you have a lot of businesses and hotels saying they won't accept if you are the same-sex couple. I mean, that's ridiculous. How am I supposed to go there? Just giving an example. And then Of course, as a Muslim country, it is expected that alcohol is legal, but something very strange that has happened recently is just Qatar has just announced that alcohol will not be sold to the fans at the World Cup's 8th stadium after FIFA had to change their policy literally 2 days before the start of the tournament, according to BBC. Wow! I mean, that's also big news, but yeah. And I would say what is also most concerning is probably for some of the brands that had partnerships, and one example would be Budweiser in this case, because they had a 63 million pound sponsorship with FIFA, and just by FIFA changing their policy literally 2 days before the World Cup, I think this is likely to be a major breach of contract. So I'm quite curious how this will develop. In a tweet literally after the announcement made by FIFA, Budweiser said, well, this is awkward. There you go. So I believe that all of these things are really what make Qatar to be a controversial host of the World Cup. Now, I would really appreciate if you'd also let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about this, and also if you'd like, please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so we can receive the new videos as soon as I post them. Stay tuned.